Welcome, dear friends. I want to begin today's episode with a question. Listen carefully and answer honestly, truly honestly. How many of you, the very moment you open your eyes in the morning, before you even get out of bed, before you look out the window, before you say a single word to the person sleeping beside you, or before you feel the urge to call someone, think of coffee first? I mean, that coffee is literally your very first thought. Do you agree with me? Here's a typical example. The alarm goes off and your brain immediately says, coffee, not good morning, not what do I want to accomplish today, just coffee. Now, let's look at what's really going on. I'm not here to tell you that coffee is bad for you or that I want to take it away from you, although I do think it's better to drink a glass of lemonade than a cup of coffee. But I know I'd get a lot of criticism for that, so I'll keep quiet. Just kidding, of course. This episode isn't about that at all. Coffee is one of the most studied substances on the planet, and the research on it is actually quite fascinating, including all the benefits it provides. But what I'm going to talk about today is the psychology and science behind the behavior of reaching for coffee the moment you open your eyes, and just the thought of it, because that habit, that specific ritual, tells us something very important about your nervous system, your stress response, your identity, and your relationship with your own morning. And here is what I've come to understand. People who cannot function without immediate coffee are often not as addicted to caffeine as they are addicted to a feeling. The feeling of calm, the feeling of contentment that represents that simple thought, this is my time. For all the coffee lovers out there, that little light switches on in your mind and says, my time begins. Do you agree? And once you understand that, everything about this habit starts to look completely different. Some of you probably say, I have to have my morning coffee because if I don't, I can't function and I get a headache. Let's start with what is actually happening in your brain in the first minutes after waking. Because most people have no idea, and it completely changes the way you should think about your morning habits. Right after you wake up, your brain goes through what scientists call the hypnopompic transition. You may not know what that means, but it is simply the transition from sleep to waking state. During this period, your brain passes through alpha and theta wave states. These are the same brainwave frequencies present during deep meditation and hypnosis, also known as the sleep mode, the part of your brain responsible for critical thinking, decision-making, planning, and self-regulation has not yet fully switched on. This is very important. You are in a naturally open, almost semi-conscious mental state for the first 20 to 30 minutes after waking. At the same time, your body is already launching its own natural activation sequence. Cortisol levels, yes, that is the stress hormone, spike sharply in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking. This is actually a completely natural and healthy process called the Cortisol Awakening Response. Cortisol is not just a stress hormone. In the morning, it is your body's built-in alarm system. It is the biological mechanism that wakes you up, sharpens your alertness, and prepares your body and mind for the demands of the day. Your body, if you allow it, will wake itself up. Now, here is where the timing of coffee becomes fascinating. When you consume caffeine immediately after waking, before that cortisol spike has had a chance to complete its natural rise and fall, you are layering artificial stimulation on top of your body's natural activation process. Instead of working with your biology and continuing your biological cycle, you are interrupting it. And what does that do over time? It trains your body to rely on an external stimulus rather than trusting its own internal systems. You begin to feel that you cannot function without coffee. Not because your brain truly needs it, but because you have conditioned it to wait for an external boost. Now I want to go a little deeper than the science, because what I really want to talk about is the identity aspect. And this is something that keeps coming up for me when I observe people's morning habits. Behavioral psychology is very clear on this. We act in accordance with what we believe we are, not what we are, but what we believe we are. And one of the most powerful things I hear from people who reach for coffee the moment they wake up is this phrase, I'm just not a morning person. My head will start hurting. Or, I can't function until I've had my coffee. And they say this with complete certainty, as if it is simply an unchangeable fact about who they are. as if it is carved into them. But here is what I want you to consider. That belief, I can't function without my morning coffee, is not a fact. It is an identity. It is a story you have been telling yourself probably for years. And every morning when you reach for that cup before your eyes are even fully open, because you tell yourself, I'm going to make myself a coffee, you are reinforcing the narrative that you are someone who needs an external substance just to feel okay in the morning. And that identity, repeated enough times, becomes what you believe you are. Identity-based habit theory, rooted in cognitive function research, shows us that repeated actions shape our self-concept. The way we behave tells us who we are. So if every morning your first act is to reach for something outside yourself, in order to feel okay, your brain archives that. It begins to define you as someone who is not okay without it. And if you try to break free from that, you run into a problem. Anxiety, trembling, even sweating can arise. I want to be completely honest with you about something that most people do not fully understand about their coffee habit. When you wake up in the morning feeling sluggish, foggy, slow, and completely non-functional without coffee, a significant part of what you are experiencing is not actually how you feel without caffeine. It is caffeine withdrawal. Here is how that cycle works. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors in your brain. Adenosine is a chemical that builds up throughout the day and makes you feel sleepy. Caffeine does not give you energy directly. It simply blocks the signal telling you that you are tired. Look this up online. There is quite a lot of differing evidence on this, with some claiming it restores your energy and others saying the opposite. Once you explore it a little, I would love to hear your thoughts. Over time, with regular caffeine consumption, your brain compensates by producing more adenosine receptors. It simply adapts to you and your system. Now you need more caffeine to block more receptors in order to feel the same effect. And when you wake up in the morning after hours without caffeine, all those extra receptors are wide open and flooded with adenosine. You feel terrible. You reach for coffee. Coffee blocks the receptors. You feel human again. But here is the key point. You do not actually feel good. You just feel relief from the withdrawal symptoms ending. Those are two very different things. A 2002 study published in the journal Psychopharmacology found that much of what regular coffee drinkers experience as the benefit of their morning coffee is actually just the reversal of the withdrawal symptoms they developed through regular caffeine use in the first place. To put it simply, coffee does not make you better than your normal baseline. It simply brings you back to that baseline after you have fallen below it due to caffeine dependency. Understanding this does not mean you need to stop drinking coffee, but it does shift the perspective on what is actually happening in your body when you feel like you need it the moment you wake up. That sense of desperation, that is the dependency talking. And once you recognize it as such, you can begin to decide what kind of relationship you actually want to have with caffeine, rather than just mechanically reacting to biochemistry. Ask yourself what the real reasons are that you drink coffee. Is it the stress you are expecting during the day? Some dissatisfaction? Simply a feeling of boredom? Go ahead and leave a comment with the real reason you drink coffee. Here is one of the most practical things I can share with you today. There is actually an optimal window for when to have your first cup of coffee. And almost nobody does it right. Scientist Andrew Huberman and other researchers in the field of chronobiology have explained this in detail. Let's see if you agree with what they found. The Cortisol Awakening Response, that natural cortisol spike your body produces in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, is doing its job. It is activating you. If you consume caffeine immediately after waking, you are essentially competing with your own cortisol. Caffeine does not stack on top of cortisol to make you feel more alert. Instead, over time, it can actually dampen your natural cortisol production. Because your body learns that an external stimulus is doing the work, your body stops doing its own job. The recommendation from researchers in this field is to delay caffeine consumption for 90 to 120 minutes after waking. Let your cortisol complete its natural rise and fall first. Let your body activate on its own. Then, when that natural energy dip begins, around 90 minutes to 2 hours after waking, that is when caffeine is most effective. So wait a little, train your body, and bring it back to its factory settings, because you are the owner of your body, not caffeine. Right? I want to be honest with you. For people who are used to a lot of caffeine, the first few days of attempting this shift are not at all enjoyable. I believe that when you try this morning ritual but without consuming coffee the moment you get out of bed, you will feel as though you are carrying the entire world on your shoulders, like Atlas from Greek mythology. Here is something I consider the most important insight in this entire episode, and I want you to pause on it for a moment. Most people who reach for coffee the moment they wake up are not actually craving caffeine. They are craving a transition. They are craving a signal. They are craving the moment that says, okay, now you can begin your day. Do you agree? Think about how many significant moments in human life are marked by ritual. Ceremony, gathering, gesture. Rituals have existed long before us, have they not? Rituals create psychological clarity. They tell your nervous system, this phase is ending, and another is beginning, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with using a morning ritual as a transition marker. In fact, it is one of the most powerful things you can do for your mind. The question is only whether the ritual serves you, or whether you serve the ritual. And what do you think about that? When you drink coffee the very moment you open your eyes, before you have hydrated, before you have given cortisol a chance to peak, before you have done a single thing for your own mental state, you are not actually making a conscious choice. You are simply following a reflex. The habit has become an identity, and the identity drives behavior on autopilot every morning before you are even aware enough to make a decision. Motivation is like a wave. It comes and goes. You cannot rely on it. But identity is an anchor. So the real question here is not whether coffee is good or bad. The real question is, what kind of person do you want to be in the morning? What rituals do you want to consciously choose for yourself? And does your current coffee habit reflect a conscious choice, or is it something that happens to you while you are still half asleep? Allow me to give you a practical reality check that connects science with your everyday experience. By the time you wake up in the morning, your body has been fasting and without water for 6 to 8 hours or more. You always wake up mildly dehydrated. That is not a sign that something is wrong. It is simply what happens during sleep. Your body loses water through breathing, sweating, and all the metabolic processes that keep you alive while you sleep. Mild dehydration, even at a level of just 1 to 2% water loss, has measurable cognitive effects. It impairs short-term memory, reduces concentration, increases feelings of fatigue, and can cause mood disturbances. A 2012 study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that even mild dehydration affected mood, concentration, and the perceived difficulty of tasks in young women. A separate study from the University of Connecticut found similar results in men. Here is the uncomfortable truth. A significant part of what you experience when you wake up feeling sluggish, foggy, and out of sorts is dehydration. Not caffeine withdrawal, not a lack of energy, not a fundamental inability to function without a stimulant. You are simply thirsty. And since coffee is a mild diuretic, it actually increases fluid loss. So, when you drink coffee first without water, you are essentially solving the problem by making it slightly worse before it gets better. That is why I mentioned at the beginning that it is better to drink a glass of water or lemonade to address the dehydration. One of the simplest, highest impact changes you can make to your morning, and I truly mean this, is to drink about half a liter of water. I know that sounds like a lot, but trust me, once your body gets used to it, half a liter of water will feel like nothing. This is not a massive overhaul. It is not a 90-minute morning routine. Just water first. A significant number of people who try this and pay attention to how they feel report that the desperate, urgent need for immediate coffee noticeably diminishes, not because caffeine is no longer enjoyable, but because what their body actually needed in the morning was hydration, not stimulation. There is something I want to address directly, because I keep seeing it, and I think it is one of the least recognized patterns in people's daily lives. A significant number of people who describe themselves as anxious, stressed, easily overwhelmed, or as individuals who always seem to operate at a slightly elevated level of tension, those same people often consume large amounts of caffeine, beginning the moment they wake up. and the connection between the two is almost never made. Here is the physiology. Caffeine stimulates the release of adrenaline, epinephrine, the same hormone that triggers your fight or flight response. A moderate amount of this is part of what makes you feel alert and energized after a cup of coffee. But when you consume caffeine on an empty stomach early in the morning, when your cortisol levels are already at their daily peak, you are stacking stimulation. You are giving your nervous system a significant jolt at exactly the moment it is already in its most activated state of the day. For people who are sensitive to cortisol, or whose nervous system is already running under a heavy load, perhaps due to chronic stress, poor sleep, or a natural predisposition to anxiety, this combination can push them into a low-level fight or flight state that they then carry for hours. They feel tense, slightly on edge, as if they are bracing for something. And they often attribute this to who they simply are, or to the stress of work or life, never connecting it to the 2 large cups of coffee they had before 8 in the morning. The research on this is clear. A 2006 study in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine found that caffeine consumption significantly amplified cortisol responses to psychological stress, which means if you are under stress, caffeine makes you even more stressed. If you are anxious, caffeine can make you even more anxious. That does not mean you need to give up coffee. It means that timing, quantity, and your individual sensitivity are critically important. And it all starts with awareness, which is what this episode is fundamentally about. I want to emphasize again to all the coffee lovers out there, please do not misunderstand me. I am not discouraging you from drinking coffee. I am simply encouraging you to start your day a little differently from what you may have been doing for years. All right, let's move on to the practical side of things, because I want to give you something you can actually do. Starting tomorrow morning, this is not about giving up coffee. It is about upgrading your relationship with it. The first thing is to delay, not deprive. Commit to waiting at least 60 to 90 minutes after waking before you have your first cup of coffee. I know this sounds painful for someone who drinks coffee the moment their eyes open, but what you are doing is giving your cortisol awakening response the space to complete its natural cycle. Your body is slowly waking up. Give it time to do so. Here's a simple example. Imagine you are in a deep sleep and someone suddenly shakes you awake and starts shouting at you. A shock, right? That is exactly what you are doing to your body. The second thing is to hydrate first. No excuses. Before coffee, before anything else, drink water. Make it a ritual. Place a glass or bottle on your nightstand the evening before, so it is there the moment you wake up. This is the breadcrumb method. You design your environment so that the right behavior becomes the easiest one. When the water is already there, you do not need willpower to reach for it. It is right beside you. Just reach for it, and those 500 milliliters of water before coffee will do more for your morning alertness than most people realize. Most people have never actually paid attention to how the timing of caffeine affects their mood, anxiety levels, afternoon energy, or sleep. Start paying attention. Keep it simple. Just notice. Did you feel more stable today? Did you feel more anxious? Did you sleep better or worse? What time did you have your last cup? What gets tracked improves, and what gets tracked and recorded improves exponentially. You cannot optimize what you do not measure. I want to close with what I consider the most important point in this entire episode, and it has nothing to do with cortisol, adenosine, or caffeine timing. Your morning is not just the beginning of your day. It is the period in which you set the tone, the identity, and the inner narrative for everything that follows. The way you begin your morning is the way you shape your entire day. And the way you shape your days is the way you shape your life. When you wake up, and your very first act, before you have even fully arrived in your own consciousness, is to reach for something outside yourself to feel okay, you are starting the day from a position of dependency. You are beginning every morning with an unconscious message, I am not yet enough. I need something to make me ready. And that message, repeated every morning for years, does something to your relationship with yourself. It quietly reinforces the story that you are someone who cannot be trusted to show up without external support. Now compare that with someone who wakes up, drinks water, catches some light, perhaps moves their body for a few minutes, gives their nervous system the chance to naturally activate, and then makes coffee as a conscious, enjoyable act of morning ritual. That person begins their day from a completely different place. They begin with the message, I showed up for myself first. I gave my body what it needed. I made a choice. I am someone who takes care of themselves before taking on the world. Behavioral psychology tells us that we act in accordance with what we believe we are. So when you consistently take conscious, caring actions for yourself in the morning, you reinforce the belief that you are a person who shows up and takes action. And that belief radiates into every other area of your life. Consistency becomes who you are, not the consistency of reaching reflexively for coffee, but the consistency of a person who consciously and intentionally takes care of their mind and body before asking anything of themselves or anyone else. That is an entirely different kind of morning, and it builds an entirely different kind of life. Here is what I want you to do. Over the next 7 days, I want you to try one simple change. Not giving up coffee, not a radical overhaul of your morning. Just this. When your alarm goes off tomorrow morning, before you touch the coffee maker, drink a full glass of water or lemonade first. Then wait. Give yourself 30 minutes, even 20 minutes, before the coffee comes. Use that time however you like. Sit in silence, look out the window, stretch, breathe. Just be present in your morning for a few minutes before reaching for an external stimulant. Try this water ritual for the next 7 days. Then tell me you haven't noticed a difference. Tell me your mornings don't feel at least a little different. Tell me you don't feel even a small shift in how you relate to your own energy and your own ability to wake up and show up. Because here is what I believe. I believe that most people are far more capable of showing up and taking ownership of their mornings than they have ever given themselves credit for. I believe that your body, when given even the smallest chance, will respond. I believe that the version of you who consciously chooses their morning, who hydrates first, who gives their nervous system room to breathe, who makes coffee as an act of pleasure rather than desperation, that version of you is more focused, more grounded, more energized, and has greater control over your day. It is not about the coffee. It never really is about the coffee. It is about how you choose to begin each and every day of your life. And those small choices, made every morning, consistently over time, are exactly what your life is made of. Your body will thank you for it. Trust me. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope the morning coffee lovers out there won't hate me for this. Just kidding. If you got something out of this episode, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next one. Wishing you a beautiful and sunny day.